What the new SEC chief just said doesn't just pump up the Bitcoin price, it's an absolute game changer. Donald Trump is making new statements here that are having a very, very positive impact on Bitcoin and the stock and financial markets. We'd even shot back up over the $110,000 mark here. We have a massive statement from the SEC that completely changes everything here. And now things are really taking off. We're seeing almost civil war-like conditions in the US. And now we're facing exactly the scenario Ray Dalio has been warning about, the fourth turning. Ray Dalio also writes about this, even in his new book, saying that this could be the turning point. And of course, this could be a really, really big story for Bitcoin as well. We also have news about the negotiations between the US and China, and everything happening behind the scenes here is just ultra bullish for Bitcoin. We're going to take a really close look at all of this now. The question is also when we'll reach new all-time highs here. Now I need all of you to give a like so that Bitcoin can reach a new all-time high as quickly as possible. We can only make that happen with enough likes. So the algorithm keeps pushing the videos. Even more people find out about it, and then even more people buy Bitcoin, sending the Bitcoin price to the moon. So give me a second of your life right now and smash that like button. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. The videos are still being suppressed, and we need a lot more traction here. First, let's take a look at the statements about the trade conflict. After a one-day meeting, trade talks between the US and China will continue here in London tomorrow. So, this has apparently been received positively by the market as well. At this point, anything that doesn't lead to further escalation is already seen as very, very positive. And that means the whole thing took 6 hours here. So, they probably negotiated hard. And the Chinese officials have now gone back home. Bissett, Lipnick, and Queer are still there. And negotiations will resume at 10 a.m. tomorrow in London. Now we're really curious to see what happens. And then came the next big story here. Donald Trump says here that he's not selling his Tesla, that he's not selling Starlink, and that Elon Musk is actually doing a good job here. Trump also calls Starlink a good service, and he wishes Elon Musk well. So now, this basically means that maybe the dispute is over. And what do we see here as well? Tesla immediately jumps up by almost 5%. And the stock markets in general actually reacted positively to this news. And also Bitcoin here, which is of course crazy, how Donald Trump still manages to influence the markets like this. We also have a second topic that is connected to the fourth turning, with Robert Kiyosaki, with Ray Dalio, and also here with Donald Trump and what he has to say, which we'll get to later. But first, let's take a look at what the SEC is saying here. There's already a statement from Caitlin Long about this, and we'll listen to the original statement in a moment. It says here, boom. And with that, the SEC is officially starting to reverse decades-long attempts to ban self-custodied assets from the U.S. financial system. This began in 1994 with Article 8 of the UCC and reached its peak under Biden, with Warren's war on cash. Self-custody of private property is, simply put, fundamental. So, the war on cash, on crypto, and so on keeps getting more and more restrictive. And now, just check out what kind of statement the SEC is making here. I wish we'd see something like that here in the EU. Because over here, the screws just keep getting tightened. Here we have SEC boss Paul Atkins.
Another core feature of blockchain technology is the ability of individuals to have self-custody of crypto assets in a personal digital wallet. The right to have self-custody of one's private property is a foundational American value that should not disappear when one logs on to the internet. I'm in favor of affording greater flexibility to market participants to self-custody crypto assets, especially where intermediation imposes unnecessary transaction costs or restricts the ability to engage in staking and other on-chain activities.
And this is honestly one of the most important statements, probably in the history of Bitcoin and crypto in the US, that the SEC, as a regulatory authority, is clearly coming out in favor of self-custody. The EU could really take a page from this. And that's exactly what I always tell you. Hey, use self-custody. Don't keep your Bitcoin on an exchange, not on a trading platform. Yeah, sure. Go ahead and buy Bitcoin there and so on. If you want, mess around a bit with ETS too, but always make sure you have a solid amount in self-custody. That's why I always recommend the TREZOR hardware wallet. I'll put a link down below. With the code Bitcoin Hotel, you get 10% off a hardware wallet if you use it. And that's a wholehearted recommendation. In my opinion, everyone should get familiar with a hardware wallet like this. It's simply the safest way to hold your Bitcoin. And especially now, as we're heading into this fourth turning, which we've just reached. Now we have riots in Los Angeles, and we're going to take a look at that too. And if the system just falls apart, You want to have better assets, as they say in English, meaning assets that can't be confiscated, where the government can't just seize them.
I'm grateful to the Division of Corporation Finance staff for clarifying this view that voluntary participation in proof of work or proof of stake network as a miner or validator or staking as a service provider is not within the scope of the federal securities law.
Here he's basically giving the green light for Bitcoin mining and staking, saying that this doesn't fall under securities law. And of course, that was the decisive statement here, which probably caused Bitcoin prices to pump upwards. For example, Willie Wu also said that the unrest in Los Angeles reminds us of Ray Dalio, of the fact that there's a high risk of civil war when the long-term debt cycle restarts. Here's something from, well, that's not really interesting here, the CIA, which is also issuing warnings about the whole situation. And that's always the thing. Ray Dalio said that a collapsing system shows various signs. For example, one sign is, of course, internal unrest, external conflicts, the collapse of the monetary system, and so on. All of that is connected to the long-term debt cycle. When the long-term debt cycle is coming to an end, and that's where we are, we're in the fourth turning, maybe not 100% in it yet, but we're almost there, then it's completely normal to see these kinds of conflicts, and we'll probably see them happening more frequently in the near future. This has nothing to do with pessimism or doomsaying or anything like that. It's simply the truly recurring cycles that we see here in the economy, in history, in the history of money, and so on. And here, Donald Trump also commented, yes, that he is making a statement about the unrest in Los Angeles. And here he then said, if you spit, we will strike back. And I promise you, you will be hit harder than ever before. So of course, these are cool lines and catchphrases and so on that he's saying here. But the problem is that, fundamentally, so much is already going wrong here with the debt cycle, with the fiat money system that's getting more and more out of control, and so on, that it's sometimes really hard to turn all these things around now. And there's always this really, really important saying that I once memorized, and it goes, poverty creates humility, humility creates diligence, diligence creates wealth, wealth creates arrogance, arrogance creates war, and war creates poverty. And now we have to ask ourselves, where are we in this cycle? That means poverty creates humility. That was the time of new beginnings after World War II. That was my grandpa and so on, when he said everyone worked together, and things started to improve. Humility creates diligence. They were all hardworking, they were all workers, doers, they toiled endlessly. Diligence creates wealth. And now we've been resting on that wealth for a long time. And that wealth has led to arrogance. And now we're at the stage of arrogance. And the problem is, arrogance leads to war. And it doesn't have to be an external war. It can also be internal conflict, where a country tears itself apart, as we can partly see in Germany. And the problem is, when this arrogance leads to war, and we're already at that threshold, the next step that awaits us is poverty. And that's the big issue. And you have to prepare for this poverty by having instruments outside of the state, by having Bitcoin, gold, silver, or whatever else, but not things that can be confiscated or are under the control of government authorities. Because we've always seen that when we're in this phase of the cycle, and this isn't the first time it's happened, it's already happened thousands of times. The only problem is, we can never really remember it, because these are 200-year or 100-year cycles, and they almost always happen outside of a human lifetime. That means a person almost never goes through all 4 cycles, but usually only 2 or 3. And that's why it's hard to remember. And that's why I can only say, study Bitcoin. And now Robert Kiyosaki gives another warning here, and he basically addresses exactly this point, saying, the last turning points included the Great Depression, World War II, the Civil War, and the American Revolution. As you may know, there are riots happening in Japan, China, France, and other countries around the world, and now, of course, here in LA as well. And it's easy to see, fourth turning points occur when societies solve the major issues of their time. Like many others, I am convinced that the most important question that needs to be answered is, what is money? That means, right now is really the right time to grapple with this question. What is money here? And to get the right answers to that here. The problem is that our banks and bankers are stealing people's wealth with fake money printed by the central bankers. I'm convinced that the era of bankers robbing the world is coming to an end. Sound money, gold, silver, and Bitcoin takes power away from the corrupt bankers. As I've been saying for years, gold and silver are God's money, and Bitcoin is the people's money. Take control of your wealth. Don't let yourself be manipulated into letting banks steal your wealth through taxes and inflation. Become your own bank. Stop saving fake money. Save gold, silver, and Bitcoin. Then turn before today's fourth bend. So what he means is the first turning or turning is actually a really bad translation. And the thing is, the people who are really preparing for this, the ones who know what's coming, they also know exactly how to get through all of this. For example, I've already pulled my emergency cord. Right now, for instance, I'm in El Salvador because I know that El Salvador has already gone through the first turning. They've already experienced the internal conflicts, the uprisings, the unrest, and so on. El Salvador has basically already gone through poverty and the war phase. They're already on the upswing again. But all of Europe basically still has to go through this phase. They still have to go through the downturn. They basically have to crash into the wall first. And it's very, very sad. I wish it weren't like this. But if you just said, okay, I hope it doesn't happen that way, then you're simply ignoring history, you're ignoring the debt cycle, you're ignoring the generational cycles, and so much more that just keeps repeating itself over and over, though of course with small nuances and little changes. And we can see it very clearly, how the warmongering is ramping up, the fear of war is increasing, and so on. And I really don't want to scare you here. What I actually want is to encourage you, to reassure you that Bitcoin is the tool that can bring people together, that can create peace, that can foster harmony. But it's simply a cleansing process. I was just talking to someone earlier, and we said, hey, the problem is, it's just like with the body or something. When you're going through a detox process, it's just annoying. It's just simply painful. It's just, yeah, really, really rough. And then it gets messy, then it gets crappy, then it gets shitty. But after that, something amazing comes along. And you can see it right now in the background. It's raining here right now. And the weather here is really, really bad at the moment. It's just rolling in. It's also just about the start of the rainy season now. And that's just how it is in nature. When it rains, it simply washes away all the old crap. Everything gets washed away, all the dirt and so on. Everything gets flushed out, just like that, like an enema up your ass, flushing all the crap through, blasting everything out, and then things are freed up again. The pipelines are clear, everything flows better, everything runs smoother. And once everything has been rained out here, once everything has been flushed through and cleaned, then the sun comes back, the good times return, the diligence comes back, humility returns, and so does prosperity. Although, to be fair, we do have quite a lot of wealth and prosperity here in the EU, in Germany. I mean, today's video has definitely turned out to be a very, very philosophical one. I've really gone off on a tangent here, but you just have to realize that even in the darkest times, there's still sunshine, and you have to focus on the sunshine. You have to focus on the positive. The positive is always what comes after the storm. Because that's Bitcoin, that's love, that's peace, that's humor, that's the harmony that's present in everything. But of course, two different worldviews are clashing here. On one side, you have the old world, that's the fiat world, the centralized world, CBDCs, and so on. The Brussels crowd, the people who have power over us. And then there's the new world, the cypherpunks, the Bitcoiners, the decentralized ones. Totally agile, mobile, digital nomads, perpetual travelers, and all the other alternative lifestyles out there. And all of this is colliding, which of course creates a lot of potential for conflict right now. Everything just needs to be sorted out. And after that, we'll enter a really, really good era. I'm very, very bullish about all of this, but you really have to think about what you're going to do during this transition period, and especially how you're going to do it. Of course, you can also set things up in Germany. I'll be coming back to Germany again soon, but you just have to be aware that you're in a melting pot here, just like in the USA. That's a melting pot too, of course. You need to know that there are certain risks, certain things you have to watch out for. Just be prepared for that here as well. Censorship and so on. These are just things you have to recognize. Maybe in a decade you'll suddenly realize, oh oops, my account was confiscated. That might seem really surprising or something. No, it all comes with warning. And with that in mind, all I can say is study Bitcoin. If you still want to buy Bitcoin, I'll put a link here to 21 Bitcoin. Here you can easily and securely buy simple Bitcoin. With the code Bitcoin Hotel, you can still get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. Guys, see you next time. Until then, peace out.